The Office is a show that depicts the everyday lives of office employees for the Dunder Mifflin Paper Supply Company in Scranton, Pennsylvania. The main cast includes Michael Scott, who is the boss, Dwight Schrute, who is his loyal companion, Jim, the salesman, and Pam, the receptionist. Throughout the show, many office workers use language for the purpose of humor and the purpose of developing the storyline of the show. In this video, we will analyze some of the language used by the characters throughout the show that emphasizes the different topics that we have learned in part 1, while also looking at how it supports the show as a whole.
Throughout the show, there is one motif that focuses on how language is used to exert power over others. Dwight Schrute, a salesman, occasionally refers to himself as the assistant regional manager, and this goes on for many seasons. In reality, though, Michael, his boss, gives him the title of assistant to the regional manager.
And that's why you have an assistant regional manager.
Yes, it is. Assistant to the regional manager.
Same thing.
No, it's not. It's lower, so
It's close.
This slight and minor detail makes a difference in the meaning and the power in the title of the occupation. Assistant regional manager refers to the position right below the regional manager, which in this case is the highest position one can have in the office. This position comes with a slight salary change compared to that of a regular salesman, and also gives someone authoritative power over the others in the office. The assistant to the regional manager is more of a made-up position that refers to a position that basically helps the manager with unimportant menial tasks. This is the position that Michael gives to Dwight to give him a sense of power and authority within his workforce. By giving him this title, Michael is able to fill Dwight's head with a sense of importance, and Michael uses this to make Dwight listen to his orders. Dwight always tries to enforce orders and superiority over his coworkers. But unlike the assistant regional manager, who has actual authority within the workplace, Dwight does not and cannot have any actual power over anyone. Jim, another salesman, points out this clear distinction many times within the show, and always corrects Dwight when he tries to call himself the assistant regional manager. The simple addition and deletion of the to the in the title of an occupation shows how people in the show, specifically Dwight and Michael, exert or take away power. The Office also takes a stab at society's views on positions and status in the workplace. With only simple differences in language, people tend to emphasize on the power scale that comes with it, though many times there really is none.
Michael's abrupt language is evident when he talks to Oscar, who is one of the accountants in the series. In one episode, Oscar comes out as being gay after an altercation with Michael. Ever since, it is clear that whenever Michael speaks to Oscar, his language and his tone differs from his usual iconic voice. It is clear that he speaks in a more careful tone to not offend him, but given his personality, Michael still ends up saying something offensive to him as shown in the clip.
Oh, hello, Oscar Mayer Wiener lover. I bet that you have a bunch of very liberal girl-type friends who trust you implicitly because they know you'd never touch them because of your condition.
This clip relates to the topic of gender and sexuality because it portrays gay people as being people that are very different. It is obvious that Michael is characterizing and generalizing gay people, as he blatantly thinks that Oscar has very liberal girlfriends that trust him just because he is gay. In addition, Michael Scott also states that Oscar has a condition, implying that there is something wrong with Oscar, like a medical condition. These statements demonstrate that Michael does not have a very good understanding and grasp on the concept of homosexuality, as he does not have the right frame of reference when discussing such topics. Even in today's society, there are many times where a person might use a different language when talking to a gay person. An example of this is gender performativity, which relates to speech that people use where they consciously or unconsciously conform to the gender roles, which usually reflect masculine speech styles. A gay person speaking might be considered more feminine because their speech style does not conform to their gender role. In addition, language that excludes gay people might be used to establish social order. Oftentimes, language is used in such a way where gay people are always contrasted with the general population because there is this pre-notion that gay people are just different from the general population. This can be especially seen when language is used to exclude gay people from activities such as athletic skill or parenting, and this is a common theme reflected throughout the entire show of The Office. In an episode called Diversity Day, Michael Scott has his own meeting regarding racial treatment in the workspace. In one specific activity, Michael prints out pieces of paper that all have a certain race on it, and the activity calls for the employees to treat each other like the race they have on their forehead. As the activity suggests, there's a lot of language used that target the identity of individuals, especially stereotypes. On one such occasion, Pam, who has a Jewish card, and Dwight, who has the Asian card, interact as such.
Stir the pot. Stir the melting pot. Bam. Let's do it. Let's get ugly. Let's get real.
Okay. If I have to do this, based on stereotypes that are totally untrue, that I do not agree with, you would maybe not be a very good driver.
As shown, there is some offensive language used in order to portray a certain race or ethnicity. The language used in this scene is intentionally stereotypical to emphasize the differences in the idea that people have of status and social relations between people in society. When Michael says to stir the pot, stir the melting pot, it shows that he wants very offensive language to be used, which would demonstrate to the other characters exactly what race they have. Pam proceeds to say that Dwight might not be a very good driver. Even though Pam herself agrees that the language she is about to use is purely stereotypical and that she does not agree with it, it is still present within her mind and within society. This is true for the language used for all the different races and ethnicities in this episode. As we go from one society to another and move from one context to the next, we can see that language is used in different ways to describe different races and ethnicities. This is the essence of what language and social relations describes. In this same episode, Michael really hammers in the stereotypical language that is used to describe Indian people. Using an Indian accent and specific words that sound Indian to him, he shows his workers and the audience just how much language can be used to portray certain groups of people in certain ways. Language is not just a sum of different words, but it's also how the words are said, and a key aspect in understanding language is to know how they are received by different audiences. This clip shows exactly that.
Kelly, how are you?
I just had the longest meeting.
Oh, welcome to my convenience store. Would you like some googie googie? I have some very delicious googie googie, only 99 cents plus.
It is clearly evident that Michael uses a stereotypical accent and uses words that do not exist in order to mock the pronunciation of different Indian foods. For the audience, which consists of mainly young adults in America, the scene is very humorous and lighthearted, as they know the true intent behind the language is not to be overtly racist in any way. However, to maybe an Indian audience, the scene can be very offensive and rude to their culture. Just like how this version of The Office has been adapted from the British version and has changed certain aspects, if this scene were to be adapted by another ethnic group, the language would be drastically changed. An Indian adaptation would not use the same offensive accents or word choice as this version did. In order to analyze how much language affects how we think, we did an activity that strongly mimics what happens in The Office. The only difference is that instead of providing the race, we provided stereotypes that we found online, and we asked our participants to guess what race it pertains to. The results of this activity are as follows.
Can you look at this description and tell me what race or ethnicity is being described here?
Asian.
Asian?
Asians. Asian. Asian.
Can you look at this description and tell me what race or ethnicity is being described here?
African American?
African Americans.
Black.
Black.
Can you look at this description and tell me what race or ethnicity it describes?
Jewish people.
Jewish people.
I actually don't know this. Is this Jewish?
Jewish.
Jewish.
As seen in the activity, language affects us all differently in the ideas we have of stereotypes. Most of the cases shown demonstrate that the specific language used exhibited a certain race. There were, however, some cases where the language did not reach certain people. The overarching theme that is present throughout this activity is the fact that most people have an underlying stereotypical view of different races, even though they are not actually racist. This has some implications that show that all of us are exposed to stereotypes by society at a young age, and we associate a certain type of language with different races. This affects how we see people around us, for example in the workplace, where someone might be treated differently just because of his or her race. With language affecting the underlying views of others around them, different types of prejudice and bias can arise in society. Throughout the show, Michael Scott, as well as many other characters, uses language in a way that provides different insight on the topics of literature, but also uses it to just add a comedic effect.
This language, coupled with its meaningful activities with the chagrin of the office, makes for a funny effect for the audience to enjoy.
In the big picture, the inconsiderate language that Michael may use, especially seen in his activity, is just one of the many examples of the type of awkward humor he provides that the show leverages, which in turn entertains the audience.